Chapter 9. The transport touched down outside of the station precisely at 9 o'clock hours. By normal standards, the arrival should have gone unnoticed. Nothing about this arrival was normal. Nearly the entire off-duty shift had found an excuse to be somewhere near the apparatus bay. Firefighters stood beside their equipment. Paramedics lingered near the medical wing. Technicians occupied every available observation window. Even drone operators had temporarily abandoned their workstations. Nobody wanted to miss this. Battalion Chief Eleanor Ward stood at the front of the welcoming party. Beside her stood Captain Aaron Rourke. Richard Hale and Jace Torrin waited nearby. The rear ramp of the military transport slowly lowered. The first thing visible inside was armor, a lot of armor. The assault exo-frame filled nearly half the cargo compartment. Conversations immediately stopped. The machine stepped down the ramp with deliberate precision. Its armored feet struck the landing pad with heavy metallic impacts. The EF-72 fireframes stationed inside Bay 3 suddenly seemed much smaller. Jace quietly shook his head. "That's ridiculous," Richard nodded. "Pretty much." The cockpit opened. Captain Weston Howard emerged. Unlike the machine behind him, Weston appeared completely relaxed. He immediately spotted the welcoming party and headed toward them. Eleanor stepped forward first. "Captain Howard." Weston came to attention. "Battalion Chief Ward." She returned a professional nod. "Welcome to the Crown Emergency Services. Station 51. "Thank you, Chief Ward." Aaron extended his hand. "Captain Aaron Rourke." Weston accepted it. "It is good to see you again, Captain." "Likewise." Aaron glanced toward the massive assault frame. "I'll admit that's considerably larger than what we're used to." That's usually the first comment. A few nearby firefighters laughed. The formal introductions complete, Weston finally turned towards Richard. The two men exchanged a grin. "Looks like they found a place for you." Richard nodded toward the assault frame. "They found a place for both of you." Weston looked around the station. "Not a bad assignment. Best station in the kingdom. That's what you said during the briefing." "Still true." Jace stepped forward. "Welcome to Station 51. Weston offered a hand. "Good to finally meet you properly." Jace shook it. "I've heard stories." Weston looked toward Richard. "None of them good, I assume." "Not a single one." Richard sighed. "Traitor." A short time later, the group gathered inside Bay 3. The secured work area occupied nearly a quarter of the maintenance complex. Temporary security barriers surrounded the section. Military communication links connected directly into Crown Emergency Services networks. The assault frame stood at the center, silent, waiting. Senior exo-frame technician Jim Marshall was already there. Coffee in one hand, tablet in the other, scowl firmly in place. Eleanor glanced toward him. "Morning, Jim." "It's not. You haven't even started working yet." "Exactly." Weston immediately liked him. The senior technician ignored everyone else and walked directly toward the assault frame. A Marine technician moved to intercept him. Eleanor raised a single finger. The Marine stopped. Jim held up his security credentials. Temporary Royal Military Technical Clearance, Level 7. Authorized by Crown Defense Command. Authorized by Crown Emergency Services. Authorized by Prince Rowan. Jim looked entirely too pleased with himself. Took 3 departments and 14 signatures. Aaron examined the authorization. "The Prince personally approved this?" Jim nodded. "Apparently somebody wants the hybrid project done correctly." Richard smiled. "That would be you." "Obviously." The assault frame suddenly powered up. Blue optics illuminated beneath layers of armored plating. Several firefighters instinctively stepped back. A deep voice filled the maintenance bay. "Senior Technician James Marshall." Jim froze. "What?" "I have reviewed your maintenance history." "That sounds concerning." "You have filed 1,847 engineering complaints." Jim folded his arms. "Most were justified." A brief pause followed. "Analysis indicates 72% were correct." The bay erupted into laughter. Even Eleanor smiled. Aaron shook his head. "I already regret introducing you to." Weston sighed. "You have no idea." Jim looked up at the machine, then nodded approvingly. "I like this AI. Support vehicles, drone carriers, an entire rescue force." Elena watched the convoy through the command display. "Most people think we fight fires." Weston looked over. "Don't you?" She smiled slightly. "Sometimes." The smile vanished. "Mostly we fight time." Weston considered that. Before he could respond, Atlas 51's voice came over the vehicle network. Update. Worker count revised. 32 personnel on site. 7 currently unaccounted for. The interior suddenly became much quieter. Weston noticed the change immediately. Nobody panicked, nobody hesitated. Everyone simply became more focused. The tower came into view 15 minutes later. Weston immediately understood why so many units had been dispatched. The construction crane had snapped nearly halfway up its structure. The upper section hung twisted against the side of the building. Steel beams dangled hundreds of feet above the ground. Emergency crews were already establishing a perimeter. Construction workers stood outside, staring upward. Some were crying, others were shouting information to arriving responders. Weston stepped from the command vehicle. Then he saw them, 3 workers suspended nearly 30 stories above the ground. Their safety harnesses were the only thing keeping them alive. One of the support platforms had completely collapsed beneath them. A 4th worker was visible through a shattered opening in the tower. Motionless, trapped. Weston had seen combat. He had seen battlefields. But there was something uniquely horrifying about watching ordinary civilians hanging helplessly hundreds of feet in the air. Elena was already moving. Command established. She pointed towards the building. Ladder 51, prepare aerial access. Medic teams, casualty collection point. Exo-frames with me. Every order was acknowledged instantly. Richard's fireframe emerged first. The massive rescue exo-frame immediately began climbing over debris that would have slowed ordinary responders. Jace's drones launched from their carrier vehicle. Within seconds, 6 rescue drones were circling the damaged tower. Live video feeds appeared on every command display. Atlas, I have visual on all 3 suspended workers, Jace reported. Confirmed. Richard's voice followed. Hail to command. Beginning ascent. Weston watched as the rescue frame grabbed the exterior structure and started climbing. Not carefully, not slowly, purposefully. The machine moved with the confidence of something designed to operate where humans couldn't. One of the workers looked down and spotted the approaching frame. Even from hundreds of feet away, Weston could see the panic in the man's movements. Then the worker seemed to realize help was actually coming. The panic stopped. The man simply held on, waiting, trusting complete strangers to save him. The rescue took nearly 40 minutes. Weston spent every second watching. Richard secured the suspended workers one by one. Ladder 51 evacuated additional victims from upper floors. Medic teams treated injuries the moment victims reached the ground. Jace's drones continuously scanned for structural weaknesses. Atlas 51 coordinated everything. No confusion, no wasted movement, no heroics. Just professionals doing their jobs. Then came the trapped worker, the one inside the damaged tower. The man's leg had been pinned beneath a fallen steel support. The structure around him was becoming increasingly unstable. Weston watched the feed from Richard's helmet camera. The firefighter knelt beside the injured worker. It's okay. The man's terrified voice came through the radio. Don't let me die. Weston expected technical discussions, structural assessments, risk calculations. Instead, Richard simply answered, Not happening today. The firefighter then spent 20 minutes cutting through twisted steel while debris shifted around him. Every collapse warning was ignored, every danger accepted, because somebody was trapped and somebody needed help. Eventually, the worker was freed. When the fireframe carrying the injured man, the entire construction site erupted into applause. Construction workers, police officers, paramedics, even exhausted firefighters, all of them applauded. The rescued worker was immediately transferred to waiting medics, alive. As the scene wound down, Weston stood beside Eleanor Ward, watching crews pack equipment. Well? She asked. Weston looked toward Richard and Jace. The 2 men were already preparing equipment for the next call. Just another day, just another rescue, just another group of lives saved. He slowly shook his head. In the Marines, we protect the kingdom. Elena nodded. And? Weston watched a young construction worker embrace his wife near one of the ambulances. Both were crying. The man would be going home tonight, because Station 51 had arrived. We usually see people on the worst day of their lives, Weston said quietly. Eleanor smiled. So do we. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Weston looked back toward Heavy 51, toward Richard, toward the firefighters of Station 51. I think I'm starting to understand why the prince wanted this partnership. Elena's smile widened. Good. Because she suspected this was only the beginning. The room was small, dimly lit, buried beneath layers of concrete and old industrial infrastructure. No signage marked the entrance, no records existed for its use. But inside, voices carried frustration that had been building for weeks. "They're calling him a hero now!" The speaker stood near the center of the table, tapping a fractured data slate. On its surface played a looping feed from Crown Broadcasts. Richard Hale, Heavy 51, the collapsed industrial mech from the financial district operation, the rescue footage, the civilians pulled from wreckage, again and again. A second voice scoffed. One man in a frame, and suddenly the entire narrative shifts. "That's how it always works," another replied bitterly. "You lose something expensive and they turn it into a story about bravery." The first speaker leaned forward. It wasn't just expensive, it was a message system, a foothold platform, months of work. A pause settled over the room, then someone else added quietly, "And he tore through it like it was scrap metal." That line hung in the air longer than the rest. Screens around the room showed fragmented broadcasts, commentary overlays, and Crown-approved news segments. Richard's image appeared again, labelled in clean, controlled typography. Firefighter First Class Richard Hale, Crown Emergency Services hero. A bitter laugh came from the back of the room. Hero! The word sounded like an insult. "They're building him up," another voice said. "That unit, that station, that whole department." Crown Emergency Services is becoming a symbol, and symbols are harder to break than machines. Silence followed. Not disagreement, recognition. The first speaker shut off the slate. "This changes things." No one asked how, no one needed to. The implication had already settled in. The next response would not be aimed at machines alone, and it would not be aimed where defenses were strongest. It would be aimed where response had to be immediate, where seconds mattered more than armor, where people ran toward danger instead of away from it. The room remained quiet for several seconds, then one of them finally spoke. "Then we stopped letting them control the story." No one argued, no one celebrated, but several heads slowly nodded. Outside, far above them, the city continued as if nothing was coming at all.